Can I ask you guys to kind of like go down the line, give your names, your roles in the show? I mean, you all wrote your shows, but other things you might have done in your productions, kind of a description of your productions, and any awards or accolades or life it might have had outside of the Fringe.
I'm Joy Rigogliano, and my show is called Supportive White Parents. It's about an Asian girl who wishes on a shooting star for supportive white parents. At Fringe, it was a half-hour comedy musical, and I wrote in it, I acted in it, but I also I didn't want to produce it, but that's just how it goes. So I did all that stuff, and yeah, after Fringe, Second City asked us to be one of their premium shows, which is like their Friday, Saturday night slots that they market a little more heavily, and then it's an hour. So then I expanded it to an hour, and it's currently running at Second City through December 13th. I have postcards with candy if you want to come at me later for some candy. Was that all the questions?
Oh yeah, and you're also scholarship winner.
Oh yes, I won the diversity Fringe scholarship, so that really helped a lot. I got a mentor and a stipend to help with the cost of putting up the production, so that really helped. And I was nominated for Best Musical, and didn't win, but still nominated, which is very cool. And we got the Encore Award for Encore Award, and then we also got Best of Broadwater, so we ran again a couple of shows here.
I'm Veronica Chu, and I wrote The Last Croissant. I also acted in it, which was not planned, but one of our actors got an Amazon Prime deal shoot thing, so they had to go do that. So last minute doing that, and then I ended up doing some set building as well. And our show... Yeah, describe that, because you had how many people on stage for you? Also, for both of you, because I forgot to ask that.
Oh yeah, I had 6 people in my cast.
And then you also had musicians too?
Oh yeah, I had musicians. At first, for the run, we had just a keyboard, but then the Fringe reviews were like, oh, we loved it. It would be so fun with more instrumentation. I'm like, oh, okay. So for the encore, I experimented with adding a guitarist and a cajon player. So then it became 3 musicians.
That's awesome. And you guys had a huge...
We had a 10-person cast. We had a director. We had our own stage manager. We had a lighting designer, props designer, costume designer, set designer, a TD.
Describe what your stage looked like, because it was insane.
Yeah, so it was...
It was crazy.
It was an existential camping farce. And so we had a whole
rug
campsite set up. So we had these green rugs to be kind of to fill the space with color, because otherwise it's just a bare stage, right? We had these 3 very Pinterest looking tents that were made out of canvas and wood. We had 6 or 7 ladders that were kind of our trees, that we had wind chimes and plants, and we had a garland strung between them. It was a very Wes Anderson aesthetic, that gives you an idea. But yeah, then we had a shit ton of stuff on stage, and then, as you know, Fringe is 15 minutes in, 15 minutes out for load in, load out. So my team, we were really lucky, and we were able to store some of our bigger set pieces, including our campfire, which was all of these bulbs of light that so we had lighting elements on stage, so we were able to store some things in space, and then we were lucky in that we had a huge team, and most of our cars were generally stuffed with all of our things, and we also had a million costume changes. It was, I think I personally had at least 40 individual props, and I'm one of an ensemble of 10, so it was madness. But we had this whole set in load in, load out sequence in which we sang to the audience before load in while the other show was loading out with all of our camping gear, and then we ran in like mad and set up the stage. Well, we had 5 minutes to get all of the dangerous things out of the way, and then the audience could start loading in at 10 minutes till, and then we proceeded to set everything else up while everyone was watching, singing at the same time. So it was madness. We were nominated for a music award, and we won Best of Broadwater, and we won Best Ensemble Show, and we won Top of Fringe.
My name's Mitchell. I forgot all the thanks. Pit of Goblins. I did it at the Complex. It's a solo show. I wrote it, performed it. I didn't want to direct it, but I kind of had to, just because my director kind of was like didn't. He got really busy, and so I ended up kind of just doing it myself, and then produced it myself, built the set myself. I had a gigantic pit of goblins, and what it is basically, it's about a solo show about a serial killer who dumps a bunch of bodies into a pit to feed goblins in exchange for never getting caught. So it's like a horror comedy piece, and so I had a ton of dead bodies like wrapped up that I had to keep getting dumped into the pit, which was built on the edge of the stage, the 3-foot stage, and then the thing was about up to here, so the pit's about up to here. It cut out most of the stage, and it would wrap around the stairs going up to the stage. So not minimalist at all.
And you had video elements as well.
And I had, so part of my shtick is that I do a lot of video because I'm a video editor, and so a lot of the transitional elements are video or sound based, because I also have costume changes and quick entrances and exits and stuff like that. So I'm still, my philosophy on it is still trying to like create still very like, it's gonna sound weird, interesting play as opposed to just like me standing on stage talking in like a black turtleneck. My thought is like, well, which I'm not discouraging, but it'd be great. But for me, I'm like, well, if I can add a little of the magic-y stuff of like, throwing a bunch of bodies in a hole and no one really knowing where they're going or how many I have, backstage teed up, then it kind of adds a fun element to it, I think. I was nominated for Best Solo Performance, did an encore. I did a show 4 weeks ago, I did a weekend, 4 shows of Pit, which is 45 minutes. And then after this run, what I did was after that, each performance had an event tied to it. So after the first performance, it was a serial killer game show. Second performance was serial killer trivia night. Third performance was serial killer costume contest. And then the fourth night was afterwards was a Sunday show. It was like an early show, so I did a beef jerky tutorial because I make my own beef jerky, and I thought that'd be fun, and also tied into weirdly to the serial killer aspect of it. So it's weird. I mean, what did I miss? Anything else? What did I miss? Nothing. Yeah.
Nothing.
45
You did
minutes.
it.
Show, funny. Yeah, I don't know.
And for your stage, like, this is kind of cool because I got to see all 3 of these shows, and I moderate a lot of panels for Fringe, and a lot of the time I'm like, there's 400 shows, I only saw one of them, but I actually saw all 3 of your shows, so I have an intimate knowledge. For yours, it was kind of more minimalist other than your band, right?
Yeah. I had one chair on stage, and then someone brings on a chair near the end, and that was it.
Do you think that you chose to do that? This is kind of like going into my like other question that I'm trying to ask, is all of you have these like amazing technical feats, but you also kind of had like fill-ins with descriptive writing or physical humor to forego the use of like a prop or a costume or things like that. How did you decide which was better to go with? And I mean, less so you.
Yeah,
less so you. But
I'll stick quiet on this one.
the 2 of you.
You mean
guys.
as far as like a prop?
Like,
or...
instead of like when you were doing your quick changes for your costumes, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna put this one thing on, and like, how did you decide how to make these things more simplified, I guess? And when did you decide to forego something because you're like, that's too complicated?
Yeah, a lot of it for me had to do with timing because I run off stage, run back on stage, and I had done a show last year where I got into this like full body suit. I mean, I had somebody helping me, but this full body suit, I had to do like this ridiculous quick change last year, and I did it and the video is timed for like 1:40, so I knew that no matter what my possible quick change would be this year, that it would be at least under 1:40, mm-hmm. So I could time it that way. But actually, it's funny you asked because I have a moment in the play that's like a really big moment where I'm wearing just like a stupid wig. And every show, there was a camp of people who was like, you need to really be dressed up like that character to really sell that part. And then other people were like, that dumb wig was perfect for that moment, you know? And so it was a choice, but it was also something where I was like, well, even if I had the facilities to do like a big, huge costume change in that moment, I don't think I would do. Somebody gave me this shirt that had ruffles. It's this weird moment. I can't really explain it right now, but it's just a stupid wig. But then people were like, if you had this shirt with ruffles, and I had this whole outfit, and I was like, this just doesn't feel like right for the piece, you know? Like, just putting on the dumb wig really fast actually was the right artistic choice, too.
And changing your inflection between those characters.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's...
Describing like that, it was like more like, instead of saying to be 3 different characters, I have to have 3 different looks.
Total looks, yeah.
It was like, I can just be 3 different people.
Yeah.
Like,
and with minimal
theater,
lighting
guys.
change, too.
Yeah.
It works. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, please.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to say
No.
something. No, I mean, yeah, just a quick lighting change can really do amazing thing. I saw a lot of shows this year where I was like, oh, I want that. You know what I mean? Like, little thing that would change, and you'd be like, whoa, that's like a whole new scene. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't think to do that, and I didn't have a person going like, oh, what if we just went, whoop, you know, and then it'll give you a whole different look, you know?
Could you give an example of that? Would that be like a lighting change?
Of a show that did it, or of like a moment?
I can talk about my show.
Yeah.
when
Yeah,
we
okay,
do
great.
that. And I should front load. I am getting over cold. Not sick anymore, but I just have the dry hacking cough. So if I cough, that's what's going on. But so in my show, we like go to different like we go hiking. And before we ran at Fringe, I ran at UCB a little bit and at Second City. So even though I was a theater major with like proper sets and stuff, comedy theaters are you really don't have any like maybe even less time than Fringe. Like you can't have a set really. So so the director also pushed us towards like not really having anything. And miming stuff. And so there's a scene where we go hike, and then we literally just turn around. And then we're like, now, look, an eagle. Like, just like, or there was a scene, and then we go back home, and then we turn around again, and then the dad goes, and now we're home. So it, like, becomes this bit where, like, we're going different places just from saying where we are or turning around or something like that. And yeah, and then the different lighting, and then what else?
Did the audience respond when you did that?
Oh, yeah, they thought it was
laughed,
so funny, yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Oh, and also, like, I got some reviews that, like, I mime a bed. Like, the chair is my bed, and so, like, I, like, pull off the sheets, or, like, I open a window, and, like, the audience, like, love that. They're like, that was my favorite part, when you pulled off your sheets, and I'm like, wow. That was, like, the littlest moment, but, and born out of, like, not really being able to have a real bed, but, yeah.
As somebody that didn't mime anything and had something for everything, how did you decide if there was like technical moments that you needed to just forego, or did you guys just keep them all?
I mean, as a writer, I was like, we don't need this part, you know, we can cut this and maybe we can move this down, but like my team likes to describe themselves as relentless. So we were kind of like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. Like, this is a problem, but it's like a fun problem. It's a challenge. And like, how can we make this happen? Like, how can we have a fire on stage? How can we burn these tents down at the end of the show?
Do you mind describing that technique, like how you guys like did fire?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we had a campfire setup that had all these different colored bulbs, and it was able to be controlled from the booth. And we ended up burning down the tents because we made them collapsible, and we also had these like this little light bulb that I don't know what it's called because I'm not a lighting designer, but it had like a flicker to it, and that was able to be just manipulated by an actor and placed beforehand, and then we did do different things that were a little bit more esoteric and, you know, had some movement to kind of indicate more of those things, but mostly because we figured we were going so very literal on things, or like if we have a bear eating peanut butter, we have to have a bear eating peanut butter. We're not gonna like mime that, which means that everything else has to be there. But we decided to go the complete opposite route, being like, let's make it happen, which is not possible for everyone, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. But yeah.
So I know that you hired a lot of designers, and worked with them. And did you guys hire designers at all?
No.
I kind of relied on the stage manager to help. I mean, I had a pretty definite idea of what I wanted when I went in there as far as lighting went, and then I just sort of like used the stage manager to be like, better like this. And then I actually had like 3 crew people with me in my show, believe it or not, and then so they were sort of my eyes, and one of them was a lighting designer, and if I had to do it all over again, I'd just be like, can you design the lights for this, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think just anything you can take off your plate is just so nice.
Yeah, I guess I relied on the director and the stage manager, and they just kind of came up with looks. Like, the director would be like, oh, like, can you, like, throw a little red here? And it was always just, like, whatever the theater had, we, like, just made it work, just to, like, differentiate some space or some different area of the stage and stuff.
When working with your designer, how did that conversation start, or how many designers did you work with?
We had, lights, sound, set, props and costumes, same person. But so I will say that it wasn't just like me saying, let's go to Fringe. Like, we're a collective of artists and friends who have done some shows together beforehand. And 2 of our lighting designer and our prop costume designer are also our producers, along with our director. And then we had a producer that was helping out with more of the money stuff and more of the publicity stuff as well. So it wasn't as much like, you guys designed this for us. It was more like the designers being like, let's produce a show together collaboratively. So it was a really collaborative process, and that it was design focused, which is why we went so maximalist. I don't know why I'm here, but I laughed when I got the email, I have to say. I was like, is this a joke? In that sense, it was everyone sitting around together doing production meetings as a team and being like making decisions together.
Yeah, I mean, like, you guys kind of all 3 have like a very varying level of what was on stage, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. But there are shows that are like, I have nothing. I am sitting on stage by myself, and I am Abraham Lincoln because I put a hat on.
Yeah,
done.
Yeah, and they're brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're brilliant.
And there's no getting around it. I mean, they can be brilliant. You know, nothing on stage, is. Yeah. I mean, I just choose to put a bunch of shit in there. Every year I'm like, fuck this pit, fuck these costumes. And then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to have this big head and a dummy that I'm like, running around with. So.
Yeah, I mean, our team joked too, because the last time we did Fringe was 4 years ago, and we also had a pretty big set, and it was like, like the family in the show was moving, so it was a lot of boxes on stage, but we're like, well, we could just put boxes and boxes and load them in that way, but then there were like buckets of water for a stone skipping scene, like somebody was baking stuff, so there was like flour and a whole, like, it was a whole thing, and we're like, well, we're never doing that again. And then 4 years later,
it's even bigger.
It's even bigger. So yeah, I don't know, but I think that's part of it to us, is like, how can we make the magic happen, and how can we be magicians in this venue?
Yeah, I think sometimes it is super fun to go all out. For Fringe, there were a couple performances, I play piano on my show, and sometimes I mime it because, logistically it just didn't make sense for me to move the keyboard player out of the way and me play it. But then there were some shows where I played with actually playing with it, and that was fun too. But I like to think, sometimes when I can't figure out the logistics of going all out with the props and costumes, I make myself feel better by if the audience is really upset that there's not a real envelope and I'm miming the envelope, then maybe my story isn't that good, or maybe it's just not that funny, yeah. So I think it helps to if you don't have what you're saying earlier, if you don't have all these other elements, if your core material is good, people will forgive you a lot.
Absolutely,
definitely.
Can I ask, with you had production meetings and stuff, did you know what venue you would have at the Fringe? Because wouldn't that make a significant difference with loading in and loading out? So,
absolutely.
So was that part of the application process for the Fringe? How can you,
yes.
If you're just starting, figure out what you can and can't do? So just curious.
Yeah, it was a huge part of it. I mean, we made all of our major decisions after we knew which space we would have, and then it was after finding out later how much space in our space we would have to keep some things that we made more decisions.
Although I'm pretty confident that our director would have been like, fuck it, we're figuring it out anyways. But like,
How
yeah.
fast is that time frame? Like a week or 2 weeks? Or?
So I just wanted to say also we're gonna hold questions just because we were just about to get to that. But no, please, I love questions. But what I wanted to say is that every venue is really different, and what I think was really incredibly unique about their show is they chose a venue with a 15-minute turnaround. But there are other venues that you can choose that if you're like, I have all of this stuff, this is my first time, and I need to have my stuff on stage. There are venues that book less shows, meaning they don't stack it like that. That being said, you're going to have a different marketing scheme. You're going to have a different team. It's going to be a very different look at how to do that type of Fringe. It's different. It's been done. Like anything that we're saying on stage is like meant to be broken. Like everything will go wrong, and that's okay. Like that's kind of theater. And we have, if you're looking for venues and like you want to have that in mind, our registration opens February 1st. And that's like when you can actually like put in the contract, that kind of stuff. Venues are already holding open houses sometimes, but most of them will be mostly outreaching starting in January. We have a venue panel that you can come to. There's like all of our main venues are there. But I said this in the other panel, but if you weren't in this panel, there's like, to be a Hollywood Fringe venue, you just have to fit within the Hollywood Fringe zone. So you can bring your own venue, and a lot of people tend to do that. Our boundaries are on the website exactly, but to give you an idea, it's like Franklin, a block south of Melrose, like a block into West Hollywood, and a block into East Hollywood, if you think about it that way. And people are like, I'm going to do this in a parking lot. Let me get the permits and email support at Hollywood Fringe to get that registered so I can sell tickets. Or mine is a walk around town. And let me email support at Hollywood Fringe to get that resolved. Or people have done it in their apartments. Or in these like very specific load in, load out Fringe venues, which are the venues that are going to book the most shows. And have an affordable rate because they're able to stack like that, if that makes sense. I hope that answered that question. But that does make me want to ask, yours was a 15-minute load in, load out? Mm-hmm. In yours, because you're at the same venue. And
I think mine was, I think it was 15.
15, 20,
It was, I thought this year we were going to have more, but then I kept going behind a show that was also really tech heavy. And, so I was okay because I knew I'd have the time, and also my show was shorter, so I could build the time into that as well, which I think is very important. If your show clocks an hour, then you have to start right at the time you say starting, and that's really difficult to do. But mine was 45 minutes, so I had 15 minutes to play with on either end, so I'd hold the house for about 5 minutes.
Did you have an hour time slot though with a 45-minute show?
Yeah.
Hour time slot, 45-minute show. Okay.
Smart.
Yeah,
good.
and I even advertised it as a 55-minute show.
Yeah.
But it really came in around 47 minutes, and it's because if more people laugh, or like first show I forgot all my lines and sit on stage for 5 minutes, riffing and things like that. You know what I mean? Or if I get in late, so they had the biggest tech-heavy show was right before mine 3 times out of 5 shows. So them getting out, me getting in was tight every time.
And to that point, like the shorter your show is, like the cheaper it is. Like when my show was 30 minutes, like we didn't need that many rehearsals. And when people needed to sub in, they didn't need that many sub rehearsals. And it was cheaper. Like the rental rate was just cheaper because it was only 30 minutes. And our rehearsals were cheaper. Everything is just cheaper when it's a shorter show. And also people are more willing to come because they're like, oh,
yes.
I've got, like, sure, I have this slot. Why not?
Yeah, they were hitting it very hard in our last. If you were at the solo ensemble ones, all the ensemble shows were like, yeah, I wish that we had done. In my first time, we decided to do like 60 minutes, and they were like, we regret it, because the Fringe.
Right up to 60 minutes.
Yeah. Like a big thing to keep in mind is the average Fringe show is going to be about 50 minutes in a 60-minute time slot. So they do have a little bit of flexibility with like holding if your mom is late. And you're like, I want my mom to see this or something, or doing these sorts of things. And like, again, that rule is meant to be broken. Like your show was like, you're in and you're out.
Well,
like
yeah,
I ran in the front of yours in the middle, like while you guys were starting. So I was like, oh, I'm late.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we regret.
Yeah.
Is that we had a 90-minute show in a 90-minute slot, and then we had 15 minutes on one end and 15 minutes on the other, and our load in, load out was like timed to like within 5 seconds. Like it was a dance. And then because we were in the largest venue here, which is like almost 100-seater, it's 90-something. So to get that many people in and get them out is also a whole thing. So I would recommend making sure your show has a nice cushion within your time slot and give yourself some wiggle room.
Yeah,
there.
come
Especially
on,
with
time.
your first time.
Yeah.
Because then, like, later you can be like, oh, I could do that. Like, you guys have done multiple shows in a Fringe.
This is our second one.
Yeah.
I'd say straight up, come in under time.
Absolutely.
You're just gonna give yourself, you know, it's just you get if people will start walking out if your show goes over a minute. The people I've seen swaths of audience get up and walk out or write terrible reviews just because it went over 5 minutes. 5 minutes is usually. You don't want to go over 5 minutes, but I'm saying if you do, it's not necessarily your problem. But man, 10, 15 minutes, no way.
People are going to be really happy if they come out of your show early and
10
they
minutes
realize
early.
they have like time to go to the bathroom or get a cup of coffee before their
Yeah,
next
right.
show. Like, yeah, that's
To give you an idea of, like, what a Fringe audience member typically would be if you're not bringing in your own audience, they're going to be people who are seeing 5 to 6 shows in that day. Like, one of the people that were on our last panel, their reviewer, they saw 60 shows during that 3.5 week span. And so you have to think about that, because if they're seeing 60 shows in that amount of time, they're straight up going to walk out. And if they're reviewing your show, they're going to be kind of annoyed. And you want to leave everybody with a really positive feeling. And also just be respectful of the other shows loading in and out, because that is the style of theater. That being said, I've seen shows that have gone over and did just fine. And but, like, it's just a general rule of them to not be a jerk, you know?
It makes me irate.
So can
It
you
makes
guys,
me so
like,
mad.
literally break down what that 20 minutes of, like, or 15 minutes of loading in and loading out looked like for you? Just so that people might have an understanding of what that was, especially with the crazy things that you guys did.
I guess mine was made pretty simple. Like, the thing that took the most time was instruments. So we'd be waiting outside. They stage you for this. I was literally in this venue. They stage you outside across the street because, you know, there's people on the sidewalks. So we'd wait across with our instruments and stuff. For the most part, people just came dressed already. Like, it's just easier. And our costumes were, like, not that crazy. Like, white parents, it's just, like, white parent-looking things. And then I just was me. So our costumes were pretty easy. And then we'd just get in and then set up the keyboard, set up my violin. We'd tune my violin. And then we would do one group number, like even half of it actually, because we didn't really have that much time. Oh, and a warm up, like a vocal warm up, something really quick. And that was pretty much it. Then we'd open the house and get everyone in, and then afterwards, everyone get out. We like packed up the instruments, and we didn't have that many props. Like my props were like a tambourine, condoms, and
What a great prop.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and an egg shaker, like just like random stuff.
Can't believe I missed this show.
Yeah, so it was pretty
You can
easy to
still see
pack
it.
up and
Yeah,
leave.
you're right.
Yeah, you can still see
Okay, I got
it.
that.
So yeah, it was a great gift, definitely, to like, our show was 30 minutes in a 30-minute slot, but because we had very minimalist setup, and I had to set the chair. That took but yeah, because it was a great gift. Like, it was so easy to get in and get out. Even if we went overtime, it really wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. Let's hear about this.
Okay. So we would meet a good deal of time before the show at our producer's house, which is just a few blocks away, to get dressed, have snacks. There's a lot of consumable props that needed to be like reset, or things that like get destroyed that we wanted to refresh. So we would do that, tune instruments, sometimes do a line through. We would carpool over together because parking is insane, and basically budget ourselves at least a half hour to find parking and then walk over. And we'd also have to, because we had like 3 or 4 designated cars with all of our props. We would meet around this corner, and drop off all of the props. Somebody would stay there and again preset all of our props. We would
Into, like,
anxiety
specific
in your
zones.
voice.
I know. I don't recommend this.
And then
I feel like an after-school special right now. Like, don't let this happen to you. But no, it was great. And we would meet early around the corner, and we would warm up together, especially because we would start singing. about a half hour to show starts, so 15 minutes before our load-in began, we would walk around the corner and have a lovely day. We would walk around the corner and serenade our audience who was lining up while the previous show loaded out.
It was very fun. It was nice to walk by and see you
so
guys
glad.
practicing and stuff. It was cool.
Yeah, and then as soon as we got the all clear to go into the space, basically we had this very regimented thing wherein everyone had a series of tasks to complete, and we made sure that we were able to do it so that nobody got hurt. For instance, I would drop off my pack in my chairs. I would run up the stairs. We had 5 of those banker's boxes full of paper cranes, and so I would load them down through the trap on the top from the catwalk down to the backstage. A bear costume, the campfire thing. Meanwhile, people are setting up rugs. They're setting up ladders and moving them out of the way. And then by the time I got down, it was time to set up the tents. At this point, the audience is rolling through. But yeah, everyone has their own task of 20 things to do. We're singing. We're having a great time.
And then you start your 90-minute show.
Yeah. Yes. So.
I had a gigantic 2-sectional pit that was about 9 feet when it was all put together. One half was the front, the other half, and it was made from pipes and paper mache, and it was thin as skin, which sucked because it broke a whole bunch. It never really fit together right. So we had a lot of sweaty moments right before the show. I mean, I would pour sweat in my polyester outfit, but right before it was all set up. Everything good? Yeah. Okay. Prop set? Yeah. Okay. 5 minutes, we're going to let the audience in. And it was always and they were always we have plenty of time. And then once we were there, it was no, we have no time whatsoever. So it was a hassle because the pit is one thing. And then there's chairs, props, a lot of props, bodies. But then in the pit,
How
there's...
many bodies did you have?
Huh?
How many bodies did you
I
have?
had 5 bodies, and I had someone backstage bringing
Rearranging them?
Yeah. Like pulling them from, bending down like this so they would be masked by the pit, pulling it to the backstage and then setting them up
To
back.
be refreshed.
Because there's a moment where I throw 3 of the bodies in the pit in the same scene. But it's like a montage, so I'm going backstage, pulling it, putting it in, backstage, putting it in. So I needed someone there to do that. And then, yeah, we would set up the pit. I had my crew guys set up the pit, put all the shit inside of it so that there's a section where I jump in it. So I had to make sure that the crash pad was there. It's just, and then the bodies, yeah, it just takes up a lot of space too. And then
How did you load this all in? Did you by yourself or did you have a crew?
No, I had 2 other people, 2 to 3 other people. So I had crew members because I needed them.
Did you have anything that you would do before you went on stage, or did you just kind of set it and be cool, going on?
I mean, Jesus, yeah. I insisted that we sing through the song, and then I also do the stunt where I have to jump over the thing with my fat little body and land on the cushions, and so I don't hit my head on the thing. So there was things I had to do, and also I'm one of those actors who likes to sit and relax beforehand, and there was none of that. I just was wiping sweat off my face, and then I would hear the music to start the show. And in the last 2 shows, I built in an intro video, so that really kind of helps to just sort of get settled and ready to go. But when I did the four shows, I had an hour before the show, and I was oh, this is so nice. I'm everyone's chilling. I almost felt people were too unfocused, beforehand, because it was that. But yeah, it's tight. It's tight, and I would say, really consider that stuff when you're doing your shows. Really, really, really consider that stuff, because in your brain it makes a lot of sense. Oh, we just do this, this, and this, we're out, but one little thing gets messed up and it could throw you off. And also, the main thing you're trying to get out there, in my opinion, maybe this is wrong, not true for everyone, is your performance, like the good performance I'm trying to put out there. But with mine, it did hinge on the props. Actually, I'll say that. Try not to have anything that hinges on anything but the performance, because if that little thing goes wrong, it could derail everything. If the video projector wasn't working, I would have been legitimately screwed, because half the show is on
And that
a
happens.
computer,
And like
it can't happen.
It can happen. You don't.
I'm just
life
too dumb to
happens.
learn.
And I'm.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was really glad you mentioned the line through and the performance thing, because I did forget to mention, like, we would stage across the street, but if we were there a little early, and I had some subs during the run, like, we would run lines across the street. And, like, sometimes we sang a cappella, and then one of my cast members played guitar, so we just, like, play guitar. Oh, yeah, that was another thing we had to set. But, yeah, we'd play guitar across the street. And just sing the songs over there. So yeah, line through. Yeah, you can do those anywhere, really. You can do them outside. We were just hoping people didn't listen to us, but.
Which I'll remind you is kind of a good marketing technique. Like there was so many times where I'd be like walking with people who were not, regular fringers, and I'd be walking with them to go see a show where, for me, mostly be in my hole of work, and I would walk with them, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's that show?" And I'd be like, "I don't know, go ask them." Like, you should, like, there was so many, like, get a flyer. And so, like, one time I saw one, and they had literal, like, their flyers all around them while they were doing their warm up, and I was like, "Wow, like, fancy."
That's smart.
And it, it helps.
Yeah.
Like a little poster or something. So now that we know, like, what your show looked like, this intensity of, like, that you guys broke all the rules that we were always saying is, like, simplify, and you guys were like, no, except for you were like, okay. But you come from that world.
Yeah.
You come from a world of simplicity. I kind of want to go back into your process. When did you decide to do the Fringe for either your first or second time? Because I know you guys have done multiple shows. And what did that, like, writing process look for you guys? What was your timeline?
As a company, I think we decided to do Fringe in December of last year. I think we'd been talking about it before, but we didn't know what we were going to do. And then over kind of winter break, our director called me and asked if we could do this show, which I had written originally 6 years ago in college, and I hadn't touched it since. So I was like, well, we can do it, but I need to, like, it needs some serious rewrites. And so we actually submitted it to Inkwell Theater, who has, like, a writing workshop lab program. And so we were able to use their space and some of their time to workshop the script, which, so I took January to do some rewrites. We workshopped it through February and had a staged reading, after which I continued to workshop it because we made even more changes. But basically I went from a kind of semi-polished first draft of a script to, like, 20 drafts later by March. And then I was still working on rewrites when I had to jump in and fill in for one of our actors. So I don't recommend doing that. I recommend having your script done just in case you have to jump in. Yeah, that was what our timeline looked like.
The Fringe had been on my radar for a few years because I was doing Trump in Space at Second City, which is a comedy musical, and that had started at Fringe. And so I'd been wanting to do Fringe for a while, and I had this show idea in mind. But, like, time-wise, like, I wanted to apply for the scholarship, and then I missed the window, and then I didn't really have a solid draft of my script yet, so I was like, I'll just wait. So I kind of, like, waited a little bit, and there's this class at UCB called Writing a Half-Hour Stage Show. So I took that class, and I wrote the half-hour version of my script in that 8-week class. And it was nice because every week I'd bring in 5-10 pages, and then we'd read it out loud, and I'd be like, get instantaneous feedback. Like, that got a laugh, that didn't get a laugh. And then, like, so I wrote the script, the book, and the lyrics in that. And then a few months later, then I sent it over to my composers who had done Trump in Space. And I was like, would you be open to doing this? And they're like, yeah. So they scored it, and then And then I applied to UCB and Second City for they had a diversity and comedy festival, just because that's where it was in the year. I took the class in January, and then the diversity and comedy festival was in October. So I got a slot there, and then I got a slot at UCB around the same time. And then the applications for the scholarship were December-ish, January. So luckily I'd already been running the show a few times at UCB and Second City. And then I heard back from the scholarship in January, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing it. I guess I'm doing Fringe. And then that was in June. So it was really fortunate, actually, I think, to be able to run the show somewhere else and then do it at Fringe, because by then it was pretty polished. So then people in the reviews are like, wow, this is so polished. I'm like, thank you. But it did take a lot of shoe leather and a lot of bringing it to so I took that writing class, but I also brought it to many writing groups, and then also putting it up many times to get it to where that is.
I think if you're doing a solo show, I always say, I want it written by, I think I did a panel last year around this time, and I was like, I'm going to have it done by December. And then I would say tech is probably when the script's finalized, right before tech, because your stage manager needs to know where the lights are going to go and that you're not going to change the words. And then the real script is not done until, I'd say, after that first preview, honestly. Because I don't know how it's going to play. What I end up doing is a couple little shows in my living room for people I know to get feedback and to make sure things are working. But after that, it's you don't know how an audience is going to react to stuff. So I generally, doing theater a long time, I think you go, okay, I know what's supposed to happen in the preview. And if it's not hitting, then I know what changes I have to make. And if it is hitting, then okay, good, I'm okay. So I think my show, both shows that I did the last 2 years, changed. This one changed a lot more after the preview. And then the other one didn't change at all. It hit preview and it was oh, okay, but I was so nervous about it. And again, both times, the script really just changed, It's written probably by March, but then it just changes. A character got added in this one that I did, and it was one of the best characters. People loved it, and it got added in the last 3 weeks of the show. I had to write a whole new monologue for this one character that came up with, and it worked. I mean, it worked perfectly. I knew it would, but it just was it's so harrowing, You're going oh shit, what's wrong with my fucking play, I have no one to bounce this off of. But yeah, I'd say I got told that 2 years ago. Somebody said, you're going to be working on it right up to the preview. And I said, well, Jesus, I hope not, And now I realize what they really meant was you're not going to change everything right up to it, but you're really going to get a sense of what it feels like when it's in the space and then when it's in front of an audience. And I think it's different for your group has a sense of what you're doing better than someone who's by himself in his living room trying to put all this stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, we were in, for instance, my studio apartment, and there were 12 of us there, and my partner would come home. So we had people watching us and giving us feedback, which is super helpful.
Yeah.
And you, before you had done Fringe, hadn't done much theater.
Me?
Right?
Oh, no, I've done tons. Yeah. I guess not in L.A.
Not in L.A., right?
Yeah. I did this. The reason I started doing solo stuff is I was in a production of something, and I was like, I kind of want to do my own thing, probably, instead of it wasn't a bad production, it just was not what I wanted to do, But yeah, no, I've been doing theater for 20 years. So.
But not everybody that does Fringe has.
No.
There's just to let you know. If you're I've never done theater and all of this is foreign to me, don't be I can't do Fringe. Because a lot of people do Fringe because it is a comfortable space to be able to try new things or jump into something that you're not used to. I also wanted to ask a question to the audience that one of our panelists asked last time that I was that's such a great question. Does anybody I know what I'm writing for Fringe? If you're I know what I'm writing for Fringe. And then are some people I have no clue, I'm just here to get inspiration. Yeah, right? And that's totally fine. Just being here, basically you guys are 100% further than most people are in this process. And I've seen people be I wrote my show in April. I registered for the show and then I wrote it. And that's totally a good, okay process if that's how you work. personally, for some people that might stress them out, and some people might need that. Like, we had a scholarship winner one time who was like, her show was called like My Hollywood Hustle Has ADHD or something like that, and she was like, I have ADHD, so I couldn't physically do it until like right at the last moment. But she had like an idea and a structure, and she did it. And it changed sometimes, but because it was a solo show, she was able to have that flexibility. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. And then before we kind of move on, I wanted to ask, are there any Fringe shows outside of yourselves that you liked, found some inspiration from, to kind of share with others? Because a good process that was said to me in a panel, and some people have heard this, and I'm sorry if you have, is that they were like, oh, I like had a goal, and then I found people that like had a similar genre that came out with that goal of like, oh, I was doing this show for other people to see it, or to record it, or to make money. Probably not, but that was no, please. Yeah, please do. And they like found those shows and then like kind of took inspiration from that. So are there any shows that inspired you guys this year or in past years?
Yeah, gosh, so many. I mean,
go ahead.
the one that immediately pops out to me was Mr. Yunioshi. I don't know how many of you were at the solo show one, but that show was incredible. It was the perfect amount of. It was really well balanced. It was really concise. It felt simple in good ways, but also rounded out in really good ways. And
Another scholarship winner.
yeah,
Dear Jeff was
I
probably
didn't see
the
that.
favorite thing I saw of all of Fringe, actually.
And this is a solo show too.
It was a solo show, yeah, and it was in the smaller-ish theater. Yeah, the small one. Yeah, right.
Yeah, which
There's
is
like
also
4. I can't remember how many.
in the one where the other panel's going on. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then that was just her in a chair and a piano player, and that was it. And it was probably the most remarkable thing I saw this year.
What show did you say?
Mr. Yunioshi.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Other shows I saw that I liked.
And of course, theirs.
Well, and
Last
of course
Croissant.
yours.
Of course, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm thinking, sorry.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Are there any ensemble shows that you guys saw that you were interested in, or musicals or not musicals, or?
I would honestly say The Last Croissant, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that Lee Atwater play a lot.
Oh, Son of a Bitch.
Son of a Bitch, that's right.
Oh yeah, that was good. It's a really good clown show in this space.
Four Clowns.
A Four Clowns show, yeah.
The Dusty Spur.
Yeah,
They've done a lot of
Shake
stuff.
Down at the Dusty Spur. That was really great. It was a really nice two-hander over, gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the space. Down that way, called To Richard. That was really well done. I thought they just had a simple set. It was a park bench and a bunch of autumn leaves on the ground, but it's really simple but really effective. Yeah.
There's a show by Laura Repko called something about Charming, something Prince Charming.
Leaving
Prince
Prince Charming.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was so good. I really like that. That was a solo show, so that should have been in the last answer. And there was Shiva for Anne Frank solo show, again, last answer. It took me a second to catch up. Too Old, Too Asian, Too Short. Like, it was so fun. I was like, I wonder if there's any other Filipino shows in this French. So I typed in Filipino, and that was what came up. I was like, I gotta see this show. And that was really good. That was a solo show.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're looking for inspiration, you can always just type it into the Hollywood Fringe site, like she did. And we have our archive of all of our shows that have ever been produced.
I typed in
The
Asian,
Fringe.
too. I was like, I gotta support all the Asian shows.
Yeah, and there's tags that you can add to your project so people can search you in that way as well. So you'll see that when you make a project page. Before we open it up to questions, I kind of wanted to ask if there was any last minute advice that you wanted to give about this process and the writing process before Fringe. And yeah.
Give yourself enough time for everything. I'd say over budget your time that you need, and start now. It's never too early to start. And also, yeah, I'd say, I mean, for me, I'm somebody that needs hard deadlines, and I'm also somebody that needs accountability. So having people to go to read drafts and whatnot and bounce ideas off of is like invaluable to me. But yeah, I'd say don't lock yourself away, like really use the resources you have and the community you have. Because I mean, my favorite part of Fringe is building community and networking and meeting new people and finding new potential collaborators and to see all the other cool art that's happening in the city. But to go forward into this kind of whole madness with a team, I found to be completely invaluable. So yeah, I'd say build a team.
Piggybacking off what you said about just working on the script itself. If you're the writer, I found it so invaluable to take I love classes because I'm Asian, but you don't always have to take class. You can also just go to writing groups. You can host a writing group. You can host a table read at your own apartment. Just make pizza or buy it from 7-Eleven or something. So yeah, the more you can workshop your work and hear it out loud, it'll be so much better when you put it up here. So I highly recommend. And you can even put up bits and pieces of it. I would put up one song from my musical at a bit show at Second City, or I'd submit to put it up somewhere else, or at an open mic even. I would sing my solo song and kind of practice it that way. So I think there's ways where you can put up little pieces of your show too and workshop it.
I'd say don't put the pressure on yourself to make the show perfect this time around. I'd say Fringe is more like either the beginning or the middle of a process. So if your show is going to be on Broadway someday, and I think this is the move. Put the 30-minute show up. If you love it and you know exactly how you're going to expand it, do the hour long. You know what I mean? I think that's the move. Put the show up. Just get it up. And then reassess. I know that you're spending money and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, this is some people are at the end of the process, but most people are usually at the beginning or the middle of the process. So they've either done the show once before and they've updated it, or they're trying it for the first time this time. Rarely are people bringing in shows that are spectacular and perfect, and they're launching them here, and everyone's going you know what I mean? Because it's just it's not Fringe. I mean, it is Fringe, but it's not the majority of what you'll see at Fringe.
And just to make it clear, if you aren't familiar with Fringe festivals, we're not the only Fringe festival in the world. We're actually based on the Edinburgh model, which started 100 years ago, in Edinburgh. Not 100 years ago, but kind of. And there's fringes all over the world. There's a World Fringe Alliance that we're a part of, and you can also know that people who are really into fringes, they are touring. They tour their shows, and they have these very minimal setups that they take all around the world or all around the country. And so people who are fringe audiences are also looking for that. So they're not looking necessarily for a really polished space. They're looking for something that does travel. And it is a different style of theater. That being said, some people don't do our Fringe for that reason. They do our Fringe for a different reason, because they want to put up theater, not necessarily in a Fringe style. Yeah.
The show I was talking about that went before me.
Yeah.
Klingon was the show, and it was Tamerlan by Christopher Merlot, done as a Klingon with Klingons,
from Star Trek.
Yeah, and they just did a whole month run over here at the complex, same space, and it's great. And it was way more polished than most of the shows that I saw at Fringe, and that was great. It didn't make it better or worse. It was a great show, but it didn't make it better or worse how polished it was. Because, like I said, a woman on the stage moved me more than anything that I saw. Woman on stage with a chair. And that was basically it, and that blew me away.
One chair.
One chair.
One chair. Maybe that's the key.
Maybe
you just need one chair on stage, boy.
Yeah. I would say, I guess the other bit of advice I would say is don't underestimate the networking. It's a huge. It can be really challenging to get people to come see your show, because there were over 400 shows this year, and it's hard to be
stand out.
We're
Stand
here,
out,
yeah, we're here. Please come see ours out of all of these other ones that you have to see. So I'd say that it's important to show up and to make yourself known and to get to meet people, and that's one of the best parts too. Is for the month of June, it was really exciting because I've lived in LA for a few years, but I've been kind of hermiting out. But all of a sudden, it was fun to walk around these streets and then see 20 people that I know now by name, and that's a really invaluable part. And they're doing art,
Yeah.
and to really find
to get to know people, and I don't know, LA feels way more like home now after June than it used to, and it's because you get to meet all these people. So I'd say don't underestimate that, and don't underestimate the other people around you that are really cool and to get
It's
to
a little
know.
like camp.
My
in that way.
advice is adult summer camp.
It's like
Yeah.
adult summer camp.
That's
like
what people call it.
you,
all
you,
the
you
time.
see, you go every Tuesday or Wednesdays to the
To
office hours,
yeah.
and you see the same people. Or sometimes you're doing Fringe, and you're like, I feel like I've met everyone. I've never seen that person before in my life, and they've got a huge crowd around them. You know what I mean? It's like literally like 1,000 people coming in and out of the shows, just working on the shows. So seeing someone, you're like,
Over 2,000 per day.
Over 2,000? Yeah, Jesus.
So there's like a lot of people, and like kind of piggybacking off of that, my advice is learn how to meal prep or decide how you're gonna make your meals for the month, so that that's not a part of your budget. And put aside some money for networking and hanging out with your friends, and prepare for the July blues, because you're gonna get kind of sad after
Aw.
being around everybody all the time. Every July, I'm like, why am I sad? Oh yeah. Oh, I get it now.
That actually I made like maybe 100 new friends like from doing Fringe, and then actually that reminded me of like, oh yeah, one of the new friends I made, his name is Sarab, and he had a great show. That was a solo show, and it was like very if you've seen Hassan Minaj's homecoming special, it was just Sarab with a PowerPoint. But it was comedic, and it was also very moving. So yeah, it really didn't take much.
What show was it?
I can't remember what it's
Was
called.
it the last power? No, there was.
It was
oh, is
at.
that,
It was on the Underground Theater. I can't remember, but it was so good.
There's one called, I don't know anything about, there's 400 shows, so I don't know. There was one called The Last PowerPoint, so I was like,
yeah.
what is this?
I was curious about that.
But it's a different one. A different PowerPoint show.
Yeah, I think it was
Yeah, a
that was
different one.
semi-horror, maybe. Last PowerPoint.
But yeah, his
We're
show's
doing a
really
great
good.
job up here, aren't
Yeah, I'll tell you later if you come get my postcard. But yeah, I thought of him because you're talking about friends too. Even I'm like, oh yeah, like I just made legit friends from doing this.
we? Yeah.
No, I seriously, like, as somebody who works for the Fringe, I've never put up a Fringe show, but like all of my friends have come from the Fringe. You guys are all my friends. So questions? Anybody got any? Cool.
Hi. Yeah. So considering the theme of the event, what are the best minimalist moves, I guess, that you think you've seen that would be helpful? You know what I mean? Like beyond just a chair. No shade.
Well, chair, we've established. And I say light, I say have an idea of lighting, like, because you can play with that. You know what I mean? That's something you
sound.
don't need a resource for, that you can work out with the stage manager.
If you're like, I'm not a technical person and I don't want to hire a designer, we have a workshop for that. In the spring, we have a technical workshop where two of our designers, Corwin Evans and Brandon Baruch, come and tell you how to tech your own Fringe show by yourself. And you can watch that online right now.
Use the space, though. I think like what the space has. That's something that's important. Like the sound, the video, the way the stage is orientated, anything to sort of up the production value without any extra money or extra resources. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just wanted to finish.
No, of course.
I mean, I think in terms of props, thinking about things that are portable is really helpful, especially because parking around the area is really challenging. So thinking about things that you can fit easily into your car, that are easy to carry, or that fit neatly into each other or whatnot. But that's something that I think before you decide what your props are is maybe something to take into consideration that I would recommend.
Are there anything like that you saw on stage happen at either your own or another show that you're like, oh, whoa, that was like so in place of a prop, that, or it was like a cool element that, like I've seen shows where it's like
Music.
it's just me sitting on a rug and it was like all lighting and sound, or like
The
there
way
was
people
one that,
use music, there was a show in this space where a guy had one of those pedals that he would play a riff and then hit the pedal and it would repeat the riff and then he'd play on top of it. And that was really...
Oh, was that Mikey DeLaura's show?
No, it was the space travel-y one. What the fuck was it called? It was in this space. Was it? Time Traveler's Guide to the Present, I think is what it was called. And he would play and then hit the thing and play. It was just cool, and I'm not musically inclined like that, so I was like, this ups the production value like craziness, you know.
There was a show, some Tattered Capes at Studio Stage that did a lot of really cool things with shadows. So like they had basically just like some strung up pieces of fabric and then projected light, and so they did some like shadow play to it, which simplified a lot of like action-y sequences while making it really cool. But yeah, there's a lot of.
A show that I saw a couple of years ago that was a scholarship show showed that they were like in the ocean by just having their base of the floor be a like net that they could just pick up, and they attached things to that net that were sea life like, so that at the end they just like laid it out and then like picked it back up. But it was really effective. That plus lighting was really effective because they did like kind of a projection of like watery type stuff. It's very effective to make you feel like you're in that space without having tons of different things.
Also, anything you've seen that you can rip off, no one will remember.
So I looked at the name of the show. It's Baccalaureate. Yeah, but that was so good. And I mean, I know I already talked about it, but he just used a PowerPoint and he talked the whole time, and that was like so entertaining. Like it was really good, and it was just him. That was
Any other questions? And it doesn't have to be about being a minimalist. It can also just be questions. Yeah.
Do you have any trick, or has anyone observed any tricks or have done a show in which you have a very small cast, but you want to have scenes where it's like a crowd? Is there a trick to making that feel like there's more people on stage?
Well, you could just have like a sound effects of like, chatter. But I think you could, I don't know if it's a comedic show, but my instinct as a comedian would be to make a bit out of it. Like, then like everyone like becomes multiple people. Like you'll say your thing here and then they'll become another character here, and it's like a bit that there's not a zillion people, but everyone's playing more than one person.
Yeah, I know. My instinct is saying puppets.
Puppets
Like,
was my
finger
instinct.
puppets.
That was what I was thinking. I was thinking a pole with like dummies tied to it, you know?
Oh, I know what I did once.
This is stupid, but it's so funny where our brains have...
I love that. I did a PowerPoint slide once with a ton of people in the background, so I did that once too.
That works too, like just a slide, yeah. Totally.
Cool, thank you.
I have a question that's similar about making a specific element work minimalistically, I suppose. Have y'all worked with like blood effects or needing to simulate injury or anything like that? Like how have you guys gone about doing that?
I saw some super bloody shows at
You've seen
I mean, some people just go for the stage blood for sure.
I can say I saw a show that did a lot of blood and throw up. Like there was like a lot of visceral stuff, which I really kind of liked about it. And I think they just had like weird packs because they would get shot and they'd go like this and blood would like splurt up. And then another thing they had, like I think things hidden around stage like this, where they were able to like take it and then be like, "Ugh," but they were so good at it. Like at one point the guy throws up in this woman's like, she's like an old movie actress, she's like a turban, and she throws up on him and he throws up in the turban. I mean, it was insane. Yeah, it was great. But I mean, I don't know quite how they did it, but I saw them do it, And the only reason I knew they had little packets is because the guy, you could see him squeezing it and going like,
Yeah.
And then I saw the little plastic thing drop on the floor. I think that's relatively cheap to do too. You have to check with the theater to make sure that you're not getting it on the
That's what I was going to
this
say.
and that,
There's some theaters that'll be like, oh yeah, we've done that a million times, then you're totally welcome to do it because our floors are easy to clean up. And some will be like, no, we're carpet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just if you're going to work with blood or elements that might be damaging, I would just check with your venue. And some venues are very, very used to that and might also have good technique.
There was a company that did a show called Buzzed Out, which was basically Double Dare. And they did it at Studio Stage. Remember that? Like 2 years ago?
They're a theater that's very welcome to that.
And they were like, I know the theater was like, don't get any of this shit on our curtains. But they basically, like, in 15 minutes had to lay down a Double Dare stage where it was like gack everywhere. It was nuts. I don't know how they didn't get anything on the things, but
Tarps.
I mean... Huh?
Preset tarps,
And they had like crew members. It was a pretty intense show. And... they just didn't get anything on but they covered everything in plastic. So, I mean, that's the high end. You know what I mean? That's like the finished show. You know what I was talking about before. So my
instincts as a comedian would be like, I would be like, I'm dying. Like,
For sure.
but I don't know if you're trying to do a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, you can go like the more like artsy metaphorical
Ribbon.
route.
Yeah.
Yeah, ribbon. Well, although I'm trying to think of something that was like did that, but in a serious way, really effectively. And the Oregon Shakespeare Company did Henry V last year, and they did all of their battles, and they did it in a 3/4 stage. It was amazing. But for their battles, they had. Basically like for all of the bodies on the battlefield, it was all red pieces of clothing, and you know when they were like battling each other and whatnot, they would like pull off like a red
Oh, I
glove
love
or
that.
something.
That's so cool.
And they were all in gray, so it was like this burst of color on stage. And then when they're holding the boy's body, it's a boy's onesie, that's red, and it was so simple, but it was really effective. So I think there are ways to do stuff like that can seem silly in really moving ways.
Tamberlin did something really cool, which was the Klingon show that I was talking about, which they would, like when they'd stab someone, I don't know if they flipped the swords or they were switching them out, but then when they pull them out, there would be blood on the sword.
Oh.
So I think they were using two swords, because then they would like do it like this. So I think they were swapping swords, and then they'd be like this, and there would be blood on the sword. And I was like, oh, yeah, I love that. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But it was a nice trick and seemed very simple. I couldn't
Look at
see
all
it.
this great advice, you guys.
I'm going to steal all this, too. So.
Is there a list online of like what the bare minimum that every venue offers? Like we have 10 lighting instruments, or you can run sound. And
I'd have
use
that
this
conversation
format,
face to
or-
face, looking at the space and saying, do you have this? Do you have that?
And,
I
and,
wouldn't-
and to be clear, if you go to hollywoodfringe.org/venues, you're going to have a list of venues that have done the Fringe before or likely do it often. And some of those pages will have that information if they decided to put it on that page. Some of them will link you to another space. But like you said, that most people will talk to you about that in person.
Yeah, I would
And
be more like...
or on the venue panel. So you can also look at last year's venue panel, kind of get an idea of what venues you want to reach out to. I think listening to them talk before reaching out to 30 venues is really helpful to see like what vibes that they're talking about are going to fit with you, and then it'll just be kind of trial and error in your
And
first.
then, things like lighting is harder to pin down until later in the game, too, because they'll have a certain amount of instruments, but they'll have a set plot for the run of Fringe. So, and that,
Yeah.
it kind of usually happens more towards the end or closer to,
I'd say another tip is have your technical stuff, like, ready to go. So in case you have to somehow troubleshoot it before a show, just know what you're dealing with. You know what I mean? So if
you don't have somebody that does.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I'm talking from a one-person band kind of thing. But like, if you have a tech person or a technical person who knows that stuff, it's way better.
And again, if you don't know anything, you can learn. Just watch our workshop online. And they have a whole packet that you can study, and it's really laid out in a very easy way to understand, to just get that basic element of knowing what QLab is, or these sorts of things that you might need to start to get familiar with.
QLab.
It'll also make it
That's
more familiar to you.
The script I'm writing currently has a couch in it, and today has kind of made me think maybe I don't want to have that.
Plenty of shows have had couches. You
Some
just
ve-
need to figure out where you're going to store it, how to get it on and off. Sorry, I keep jumping in, but
Have you considered one chair?
Well, I was gonna
I
pitch.
like that.
I was gonna pitch 3 chairs and a fabric over it,
Yeah.
like a bed sheet or
That could
something.
work.
But
A lot of venues will have, and not all, but some will be like, yes, we have that. It's depending on their availability. But some
Or
venues
space.
will really come with either space to store it, or will come with some things like, I know for sure, like some of those like one-off theaters are going to have more set stuff because they're only one theater in their space.
But some theaters do have a very narrow load-in, load-out zone, or really tight hallways, or no backstage space. So I think that's something I would, if you really want to make the couch happen, I think you can. But I would
yeah, pick
But
a
then
venue
you pick
maybe
your
pick your venue based
that
on
has
that.
one or that is easy
Yeah.
to load in.
Yeah, because a lot of these like technical elements are going to be based on like what you choose as your venue. And there's so many ways. Like, I've seen shows on the street, like I said, like there was one that was like, we're gonna mime a baseball game, and it literally the whole show was them miming a baseball game on that field right over there. It was great.
It was great.
Or like, I'm gonna do Hamlet in a van. It's one of the immersive shows that came out of here. Or like, we're gonna walk and have a date around town, and we're gonna walk around to different places. You know, everybody does things differently.
Yeah, there was a show this past year that had a huge futon on stage, and actually I kind of was like, how the hell did they get that up and down the stairs, you know? But I think it lived back there. But again, it's like they had it. I'm sure it was a massive pain in the ass, but they had it, you know. So it depends on how important that stuff is to you.
Anything else? Any other burning questions? All right, well, since we have 10 minutes, can I ask them another question, or is anybody like, I need to go? If you need to go, please do. But the other question that I kind of want to ask, just because I was like really thinking about it, was editing. What do you guys do about like editing? I know that we touched base a little bit on this, and feedback. And I know that you guys had mentioned a couple different places. And I wanted to say, could we repeat those places to people so that as they're going through this, they have those resources in mind?
For editing, meaning like...
Or like feedback processes. Like you mentioned doing a class, and you mentioned doing another program. Could we re-mention those things just so people have them if they didn't get them?
Sure. Yeah, I work through Inkwell Theater. Inkwell Lab does things, but there's tons of writing groups about town, or start your own with friends for sure. There's a lot of workshops out there for free, or meetups for writers that I would recommend if you don't have friends yet.
Cool.
But, yeah.
Yeah, UCB has a writing your half-hour stage show, so that's also why my show was half an hour at first. And they offer it kind of sporadically, so that's where I took that.
Great. Cool. So I just have a couple of announcements before we go. We are going to have speed dating in this room starting from 3 to 5, and then a mixer afterwards. Please feel free to come back. If you are, though, could you sign up where you got your tickets, just so we know how many people are coming and how many chairs to set out. Again, you got the discounts going on over there at Jessie Boy, the Fringe, or the Broadwater Plunge will be opening at 2 p.m. If you're like, I don't want to go get food, I want to get a drink, please go there. Brazil Kiss is another great little coffee shop that's they might not be open because it's Saturday. Well, then there's the Hudson Coffee Shop that's right down the street over there, as well as the Starbucks if that's your jam. And please stick around. Ask any questions. We'll be kind of chilling for a little bit. Thanks.
Thanks.